Everybody needs someplace to get away to. An off-grid cabin, a tiny house, somewhere out of the way, and out of the stream of what's going on today in the world. A little cabin like this doesn't need to be expensive, and it doesn't need to be complicated. In this video, my wife Brooke and I are going to show you guys how to build a small, efficient, very simple, very affordable getaway cabin. First thing you need to do is choose a site. Brooke and I have a section of our property that overlooks a big field without any obstructions in the view, no houses or barns or anything else. A long view to the north. So we've chosen this spot with a fantastic view, and we're going to butt the cabin right up tight against this big red pine. Now this red pine is probably 20 inches across at the bottom, but it's only about a 20-foot tree. It's real stumpy and thick, so we're not worried that it's ever going to be a problem blowing over on the building. First thing is to clear the site, get all the branches out of the way in the area that the cabin's going to go, and then get that area nice and cleaned out. Now Brooke and I have been building cabins for 20-some years, and we always pick a spot that feels right. That's the criteria. It's got to be a place that you like to be. It's got to be a place that you feel inspired to build something. That's basically all we go on. Just look for a good spot where a cabin looks like it belongs there. Now that we've got all those branches cut up, moved out of the way, thrown into trash piles and cut into firewood, we're to the point now we can pick a corner. We're going to pick where the uphill corner goes that's closest to the tree. Then we're going to figure everything out from that point, and then we're going to start digging in our foundation pads. And when it comes to a foundation, our whole intention with this project is to show you the cheapest, simplest way we could think of to put in a foundation. Now the bigger the building, the better the foundation has to be. When you get into a small building like this, it doesn't need much of anything for a foundation. And it's a light enough building that it can be adjusted to compensate for any movement in the ground. So there is no reason to do a real foundation for a cabin this size. And that cuts a lot of the cost out of it. I spent most of my 20s and early 30s as a cement contractor. I know a thing or two about foundations. This is probably the least expensive way I could think of to get a building out of the ground, but it's only for a small building. Now we're going to use concrete footing pads. These are for a pole barn type construction. It's just a round concrete cookie you can buy at Lowe's or Home Depot. They're about 45-50 pounds a piece. They cost about $1.75 each. We're going to put one of these pads at each corner where a corner post from the cabin is going to go down to the ground. We're also going to put one mid-span between one corner and the next. We're also going to put an additional block right in the very center of the cabin in case we want to stiffen the floor later with some center floor support. Now this cabin is going to be 10 foot by 12 foot with a single pitched roof. The back wall is going to be a total of 6 feet high, and the front wall is going to be a total of 8 feet high. So Brooke is laying out the top and bottom plates for the back wall right now, getting a jump on the framing while I finish up the foundation. And then after that, she's going to cut the studs that go in that back wall. By the time we have all the concrete pads in the ground and everything's packed in and ready to go, we've got about $20 into the foundation. Not bad, not bad. Just like that, we're ready to start building the floor. Now this floor is going to be built out of 2x6s, rough sawn 2x6s we bought from the Amish. Now these are 2 inches wide and a full 6 inches deep, and they're plenty stout for a small floor like this. Now building a floor like this is just a matter of building a simple box. This cabin is going to be 10 foot by 12 foot. So to build the actual box of the floor, we're going to use two 12-foot 2x6s and two that are 10 foot minus 4 inches, and they're going to go inside on the ends. So altogether, our total dimensions are going to be 10 by 12. Once we've got the box tacked together, we're just going to pull it up level on some temporary supports. And from this point, we can do our layout and drop in our floor joists one at a time. You'll notice once we get it settled down in, I just put one nail in and I walk away to get the next floor joist. Brooke will put a nail in her side and we're ready to set the next one in. We'll nail all this up once it's all together. Once the frame of the floor is built, we're going to make sure it's good and level. And then we're going to take and measure down to the existing concrete pads and cut the legs that are going to support this cabin. For that, we're using a pressure treated 6x6. I'll show you more on that later. Now that all our floor joists are in place, we're going to finish nailing them off. We're using I think it's a 24 penny galvanized spike. It's like a 4.5 inch nail. Because this rough cut lumber is so much thicker than store-bought lumber, you need a bigger nail. Not to mention the galvanized. I like to use galvanized whenever I can, just for the grabbing power of a galvanized nail. When we're done nailing in the joists, we're going to put the joist hangers in. Now, joist hangers come in 1.5 inches, and this is 2-inch lumber. So I've taken our joist hangers and kind of remanufactured them to fit a good solid 2x6. I think you can buy them in 2 inches, but I just picked these up locally, and that's what they had. So I had to make them fit. That's not a problem. Now, this is super easy work that anybody can do. And if you start late in the day and you work slow, maybe that's as far as you'll get. It's the end of day one. What a beautiful morning. Day 2. Today what we're going to do is we're going to build the legs that are going to hold up the cabin. And while I'm building the legs, Brooke is cutting studs for the wall, trying to get ahead of us so we're ready to go when we get to that point. I'm going to take this 6x6 and I'm going to score it 2 inches deep on 2 sides for a total of 6 inches. And then I'm going to take the chips out and that's going to, you're going to see, it'll fit right in there, make a good solid leg, and then later on I'll really lock it in well. Now here's an old trick from the concrete world. When you're nailing against something that's not that solid, stick a sledgehammer on the other side of it. That'll give you a good solid nailing surface. Each one of these corner posts are going to be fit in there at the exact length that they need to be. Now this old handsaw belonged to my grandpa. And for this project, I cleaned it up. Took all of the bends out of it, which is a bit of a tedious process. Then I sharpened every tooth with a triangle file and a saw vise. Once the teeth were all sharpened, I took a saw set and I set every one of the teeth. My grandpa always loved to build stuff. I think he'd be really happy to see his old saw working on this cabin. Now in the floor, we're going to use R13 insulation, 4-inch insulation. Why would we do that? Well, it's because it's what we've got. So Brooke is nailing in some little furring strips that are going to hold in a 1/4-inch plywood floor. We're going to put the insulation on top of that, and then we're going to put our subfloor over top of that. And at that point, we'll be ready to start putting up some walls. I hope you guys have really got the impression so far that this is well within anybody's reach. You don't need to know much of anything to build something like this. It's very, very simple. It's a very freeing thing too. People are supposed to build their own structures. You're supposed to build your own house. It's kind of in our DNA. Nowadays there's this impression that only professionals should do stuff like this. Well, I don't think that's the case. I think human beings are just creative by design, and building stuff, especially building stuff for yourself, it's just something I think everybody should do. Should give it a shot, see how it feels. I always thought it felt like the right thing to do. About this time in the process, my brother stopped by to offer some words of encouragement.
I mean, if you guys weren't going so slow, I'd probably stay and help, but
well, we have this.
this pace is just killing me.
Now this is a very unconventional floor. We're using an R13 insulation with a craft face, which is kind of a vapor barrier face. This should be 6-inch R19 insulation, but this is what we have, and it was free. The flooring is a treated plywood flooring, and we're putting the treated side down because it's almost like a wet green treat, and we're probably going to paint this floor. Looking out at that view to the northeast, you can get a good idea why we picked this spot. What a nice view. Now here's the top and bottom plate that Brooke laid out earlier in this video. We're going to take the bottom plate, put it where it goes, and the top plate where it goes, and we're going to put the 6-foot back wall studs where they go. Build the box, nail everything in place, sheet it and stand it up, which is basically all you need to know for building a wall. If there's a window that goes in the wall, there's a little bit more to it, but not much. This is basically wall building 101. Every house you've ever walked into that was stick framed was built kind of like this. Now this T111 siding is meant to be an all-in-one solution. It's a plywood sheeting with what appears to be a board face on it. It's kind of a one-step process. You put it up and the building is done if that's the look that you want. We're using these punches to set the nails in the recessed areas.
I think it slid on your side.
And just like that, the wall's done and it's almost stood up. Now once you get a wall stood up, there's not much to do. Just make sure it's flush to the areas it's supposed to be flush to. Now this one goes the entire length of the cabin, so we just tap it to make sure it's flush. We make sure that it's plumb, set a brace, nail the bottom off. Pretty simple. Now once we're done nailing off that back wall, we start on the front wall. And in this front wall there is one complicated area, the large picture window in the middle. Take a look at any book on building and it will show you how to frame in a window opening. And once you see it, it's quite self-explanatory. One thing to mention here is when standing a wall, you always push up. Make sure you don't push out away from you. There's always a chance you could slide a wall right off the end of whatever it is you're building it on. So lift straight up. We know that the floor is totally level. If we make the front wall and the back wall completely plumb, then we're ready to set our rafters on. Now I cut that notch out with a skill saw, but I only go right to the corner of the cut, and then I finish that cut with a handsaw. That way you don't weaken the rafter. Once you have one rafter made, you can use it as a template to make all the additional rafters. Now once the rafters are on, you can at least tarp off the roof area and at least keep your site somewhat dry in case there's bad weather. Now the end walls are a whole different setup when it comes to this style of a building. I'm going to put a bottom plate on, but there won't be a top plate to the wall. And each one of these studs is going to be put in one at a time. They're going to be custom cut to fit in. They're going to act as a support for that rafter that's on the very end of the wall. And of course, they're going to act as wall studs. Custom fit, every one. Now, if you're into the nuts and bolts of how this works, I lay the bottom plate out for a 2-foot on-center standard layout. And then on the top, when I put my stud up against that rafter, I make sure I'm exactly the same distance from the corner, top and bottom. And then I mark that stud, cut a chunk out to fit right into that space. Pre-drill the holes, because you're not dealing with a lot of wood here, and then nail it off to the rafter. It's pretty simple. Once you do it, once you actually physically go through the process of building one of these, you get how it works. Then I'm going to throw in some trimmers and tack in a window sill plate. We're going to have a 4x4 window on this wall because why not? I'll lift up that piece of T111 siding and get it right where it needs to go, and Brooke will mark the inside of the window opening and the line at the top of the rafter. And then I can take this piece, make all the custom cuts, and set it right in place. Once the one wall is up, we lay the plate on the other side, nail it all down, then take out the door opening.
That's so much better.
This will also help us to keep it clean because you can get all the dust and dirt swept directly out. You don't need a vacuum or anything. There's a close-up shot of cutting that individual stud and pre-drilling the holes where the nails go through it. I put that up, goes right into place. I've already marked it when I did the layout. Throw in the nails, it's good to go. Last night we had about an inch of rain, all at once, within about an hour. So Brooke and I ran up, made a mad dash, and got this place plasticed off, because we'd like to get it stained today. You don't want to stain wet wood, so we put plastic around the whole building and put a tarp over the roof. I use the Sawzall here to cut the extra plywood out of the main window opening. Once this is all cut away, we'll be ready to install our big picture window when we get to that point in the process. Now that's a nice view.
Whole front wall is window.
Yeah, that's pretty nice.
It is.
Stove's gonna go in the corner.
Yep, still
Window here, window there.
Big old window. Nothing but window.
Nothing but window.
That's awesome.
Now the roof is gonna be 1x4 rough cut. 16 inches on center, and then metal roofing over top of that. What we want to do today is we'd like to get this roof completely done. And Brooke wants to get the cabin completely stained, and then we're totally dried in. We're going to be able to beat the weather and be ready for winter. I think we're on day 4 or day 5 at this point. But as long as we get the tin on the roof, we're ready to go. Now when it comes to tin, I mark out all of the holes so they line up with the 1x4 roof skip sheeting. I want a 2-inch overhang, and then I want to be right in the middle of that 1x4. So my first hole is always 4 inches from the bottom. Once I've got all the holes marked, I pre-drill every single hole. This doesn't take very long. Just make sure that all of the roof metal is lined up together. Brooke is finishing up the staining process. Now the black she's using it's a charcoal stain, and it's a different concept. I wasn't quite sure about it, but once it was done, I thought it looked pretty cool. You'll see it. Considering the time of day and how much light we have left, I think it might be overly ambitious to get the roof metal on today. But we can get all the skip sheeting. That's the 1x4 roofing material. We can get all that nailed into place and the ends all cut to the right length. If we could manage to get that part of the project done today, then by tomorrow we could put the metal on. While I'm filming the building process, Brooke is also filming the building process. When you're done watching this video, if you want to see more, pop over to her channel, Girl in the Woods, and check out her version of the beginning of this build. I'll leave the link in the description. Now on the roof here, you can see I'm cutting these little blocks, and they go in between the skip sheeting. That keeps the squirrels out. Squirrels like to get into anything people build. Best to keep them out. One thing you learn building anything. Building always takes longer than you think. So this is where we're going to have to leave off for today in this part 1 of a several part series on building an inexpensive, simple getaway cabin that anyone can build and anyone can afford. Thank you guys so much for watching Bush Radical. We'll see you on the next one.